Good evening, my dear travelers. Do you hear that? That low, rhythmic hum vibrating through the soles of your shoes. It is the heartbeat of the modern world. We built these machines of iron and steam to conquer distances, to outrun time itself. But tonight, allow me to guide you into a realm where steel rails remember more than footsteps, and where the night itself holds its breath as something ancient passes by. A train is, after all, a curious vessel. It is a suspended reality, a place between here and there. When you are on a train, you belong nowhere. You are in limbo. Perhaps that is why the spirits are drawn to them. We assume that when the engine stops and the lights go out, the carriages are empty. But what happens when a passenger never truly arrives? When the journey extends beyond the final stop and beyond life itself? Sit with me for a while in the dim light of this forgotten station. Pour yourself a drink, dim the lights. For on some nights, the rails sing. And if you're quiet enough, truly quiet, you may hear the dead boarding. Welcome to From Beyond.
Blackpool Pleasure Beach. The name evokes images of neon lights, the scent of cotton candy mixing with the salt spray of the Irish Sea, and the mechanical roar of roller coasters. It is a place of joy. But hidden within its noisy arcades lies a legend far older and far darker than the steel rides that surround it. It begins in 1930. The park opened an attraction simply called the Ghost Train. It was the first of its kind in the world. Visitors flocked to it, expecting cheap thrills, rubber skeletons, and mechanical jump scares. They believed the monsters lurking inside were nothing but paint and plaster. But one night, a tragedy turned fiction into something far more sinister. A dedicated ride operator named William George, known affectionately by his colleagues as Clog due to his heavy footwear, was performing maintenance inside the ride. The Ghost Train is a labyrinth of dark corridors, tight turns, and false walls. The details of his death are still debated in hushed tones. Some say a stray spark ignited the flammable scenery, filling the tunnel with choking smoke. Others claim the machinery malfunctioned, trapping him between the gears and the wall. Whatever the truth, William perished in that darkness, alone, surrounded by the mocking grins of papier-mâché monsters. He died, but he never clocked out. For decades since that night, staff members have reported the same unsettling phenomenon. It usually happens after the park closes, when the neon lights flicker off and the ocean wind howls through the metal structures. Operators report seeing a shadowy figure standing at the back of the control booth, just watching, checking the dials. But when they turn to speak to him, he vanishes into the gloom. The haunting is not limited to the staff. Visitors riding the attraction often complain of a physical assault by the unseen. They describe a freezing cold breath on the back of their necks during the final turn of the ride. A specific spot that engineers have confirmed is devoid of any air conditioning or fans. Others claim to hear the heavy, rhythmic thud of footsteps running alongside their cart. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of heavy clogs on wooden tracks. But one story stands out above the rest, chilling the blood of everyone who hears it. A mother was enjoying a day out with her young son. They boarded the Ghost Train, laughing, expecting a fun scare. During the ride, she snapped a photograph of her son sitting in the cart. When she developed the film days later, her blood ran cold. There, in the photo, standing directly behind her son's seat, was a man. He wasn't a prop. He wasn't a mannequin. He was a tall, gaunt man. His clothing was darkened with soot and grease. He wore heavy boots, and he was smiling directly at the camera. The cart had only 2 seats. There was physically no room for a third person. She took the photo to the park management, demanding an explanation for the actor who had dangerously jumped onto their cart. The manager looked at the photo, his face turning pale. He checked the schedule. No actors were in the ride that day. He simply whispered, Clog is back again. William George had found a way to keep the ride running forever. The Hudson Line in New York is usually uneventful. It is a commuter vein, carrying exhausted students, quiet business travelers, and tourists back and forth from the city. The rhythm of the wheels is hypnotic, lulling passengers to sleep. But on late evenings, specifically on the last run towards Poughkeepsie, conductors share a story they rarely repeat to outsiders. They call him the Silent Man of Poughkeepsie. He is not a chaotic spirit. He does not scream or throw objects. His horror lies in his stillness. He always boards at the same time, around 11:20 p.m. He always waits at the same spot on the platform, away from the light. And he is always dressed as if he stepped out of a noir film from the 1950s. A heavy dark coat, a rumpled fedora hat casting a shadow over his eyes, and leather gloves worn thin at the fingertips. The man never carries a ticket. He never carries luggage. Conductors, armed with their digital scanners, often approach him. They report that the electronic system registers a seat occupancy. The sensors know something of weight and mass is sitting there. When a conductor asks for his fare, the man does not look up. He speaks softly, in a voice that sounds distant, muffled, as if speaking through a thick wall of glass. I'm only riding until the river. Seasoned conductors know to stop there. Those who try to press further or threaten to remove him report a sudden, overwhelming wave of nausea. A heavy pressure builds in their chest, a primal instinct screaming at them to run. The air around seat drops 10 degrees in a second. The train continues its journey north. The lights flicker rhythmically. Other passengers become restless, unconsciously shifting in their seats, glancing nervously toward the man who never moves, never blinks, never looks out the window. But the true terror arrives when the train approaches the bridge over the Hudson River. As the sound of the wheels changes from the solid thud of the ground to the hollow echo of the bridge, he disappears. He doesn't walk away. He doesn't go to the bathroom. He simply ceases to exist. One moment, a solid form in a heavy coat. The next, an empty seat, unnervingly cold to the touch. Years later, a curious researcher dug into the local archives. He found a small obituary from the mid-1950s. A man fitting that exact description, same coat, same hat, had jumped from that very bridge after losing his family's fortune in a financial collapse. Some believe he returns every night, confused, still searching for a way home to a family that is long gone. Others claim he is trapped in a loop, endlessly replaying the last journey he ever took, leading up to his final, tragic decision. But the conductors know the truth. They stop counting tickets when the train crosses the Hudson, because they know that when they reach the other side, their passenger count will always drop by 1. The London Underground, the Tube. It is the oldest subterranean railway in the world, a labyrinth of tunnels, soot, steam, and history. Millions of lives pass through it every day. But beneath the modern rush hour lies a layer of trauma that has soaked into the very walls. Among all the stories whispered between late-night track workers and station guards, none unsettles them more than the woman in grey. Her apparition is most often spotted along the Piccadilly line, specifically in the older stations that were used as bomb shelters during the Second World War. We must remember the history here. During the Blitz, these tunnels were not just transport, they were subterranean cities of fear. Thousands of terrified civilians huddled together on the tracks, sleeping on concrete, while London burned above them. Records confirm that a makeshift hospital once operated in the tunnels near Holborn Station. It was cramped, dimly lit, smelling of antiseptic and fear, constantly overwhelmed by the injured. And it is here that the woman in grey seems forever trapped. Witnesses describe her with startling consistency across decades. She is a pale figure, wearing a utility-style grey coat popular in the 1940s. Her eyes are dark, expressive, and filled with an infinite sadness. Her hands are always clasped tightly against her chest, as if she is holding something precious, something that is no longer there. Late-night commuters sometimes see her sitting alone on a bench at the far end of the platform, gazing at the dark mouth of the tunnel, waiting for someone who never came back. But the most chilling encounters come from the train operators themselves. One driver, a veteran of 20 years, reported seeing her standing dangerously close to the edge of the platform at 1 a.m. Terrified of hitting her, he slammed the emergency brakes. The screech of metal on metal echoed through the station. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He jumped out of the cabin to check the tracks, but the platform was empty. He was shaken, but assumed it was a trick of the light, until the station master reviewed the footage. The grainy video showed a faint, static-filled silhouette standing at the edge, and then evaporating into mist the second the train's headlights touched her. Another worker, doing track maintenance after hours, swore she entered his empty carriage while the train was parked. He heard the doors hiss open. He heard footsteps. Click, 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 echoing softly on the metal floor. He called out, "Miss, the station is closed." He followed the sound of the footsteps until they suddenly stopped. Not at a door, not at a seat. They just stopped in the center of the aisle, as if the walker had dissolved into the air. Historians and psychics believe she was a mother separated from her child during a chaotic air raid siren. She died in that underground hospital, never knowing the fate of her son. And so, she wanders still, riding the Piccadilly line back and forth, endlessly searching the faces of strangers for the little boy who never found her. Japan's rail system is legendary for its precision, cleanliness, and efficiency. It is a symbol of modernity. But beneath that polished surface lie some of the oldest and most deeply rooted spiritual beliefs in the world. In Japan, the boundary between the living and the dead is thin, and there is a belief that spirits travel alongside us, especially during umagatoki, the twilight hour, and midnight. The legend centers on the last train, the final service that runs through the rural lines near Tohoku, winding through dense forests and mountains. Passengers on this final run occasionally report something strange, something that defies the logic of the modern world. They speak of a woman in a pale, white kimono. Her long black hair hangs down, completely obscuring her face. She stands perfectly still near the sliding doors. It doesn't matter if the carriage is full or empty. She does not hold on to the straps. She does not sway with the movement of the train. She is simply anchored. The most disturbing detail. She never boards with the others. When the doors close and the train begins to move, passengers simply realize she is suddenly there. One university student described a terrifying experience. He was riding home late, studying on his phone. He realized the train had grown unusually quiet. The background chatter of other passengers had died out instantly. He looked up. The other passengers were staring at their laps, deliberately avoiding looking at the door. The air smelled of wet earth and incense. When he glanced toward the door, he saw her. Or rather, He saw her reflection in the dark glass of the window. But when he turned his head to look directly at the spot where she should be standing, there was no one there. He looked back at the window. The reflection remained. And this time, the hair had parted, and a single eye was watching him from the glass. Another account tells of a conductor performing a final sweep before the train went to the depot for the night. He walked from carriage to carriage. All clear, all clear. He reached the very last carriage and froze. One seat, the very last one in the corner, had a passenger, a woman in white, head bowed. The conductor sighed, exhausted. He approached her politely. "Last stop, miss. The train is out of service. May I ask where you are headed?" The woman remained silent. The conductor reached out to gently tap her shoulder. His hand passed through a pocket of freezing air. She turned her head slowly, cracking sounds emanating from her neck. She looked up. She smiled, but her mouth was far too wide, a tear in the fabric of reality. The train lights cut out instantly, pitch black. When the emergency lights flickered back on seconds later, the carriage was empty. The conductor stood there, shaking. The seat was empty, but on the floor leading to the closed door, there was a single, wet footprint, a bare foot. Folklore scholars suggest these are spirits who died far from home, muenbatoke, or unconnected spirits. They try to return via the last train, hoping to complete a journey they were denied in life. So, if you ever find yourself running to catch the midnight service in Japan, take a look around the carriage. If the air feels cold and the reflection in the window doesn't match the person standing next to you, you may not be traveling alone. I have told you what I know. Whether you believe it or not is entirely up to you.
Trains are curious creatures, my dear traveler. They are more than just metal and wheels. They carry not only bodies, but memories, regrets, longing, and sometimes the lingering shadows of those who refuse to let their final journey end. Perhaps that is why we find them so haunting, because in a way, we are all passengers on a line we do not fully understand. We board, we depart, and we leave traces behind on the seats we occupied. The question is, when your final stop arrives, will you get off? Or will you ride the rails forever, waiting for a destination that no longer exists? So, the next time you are on a late commute, and you hear the rails humming in the dark, listen carefully. Don't put on your headphones. Don't look at your phone. Just listen. For the night has many stories, and some of its passengers have never bought a ticket. I'm Sebastian, your host. Until next time, I will be waiting at the platform.